Hi. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to Getting Started, Intro to 3D Printing with me, Brian. I am a librarian at our Chute Park branch, mainly. And I am a 3D printing newbie, turned kind of evangelist, I guess. And we are going to watch it's about a half-hour video that I put together. We cover the software Tinkercad. That is a great place to start making and modeling. I look at the technology behind 3D printing, and we look at the 3D printer. And I'm sure I skipped enormous important things, so there will be a Q&A at the end. We also have we're going to try to do a short survey. It's absolutely not required, and it is 100% helpful for us in our programming decisions. Without any further ado, we're here with Kate, and I think Kate can go ahead and roll that tape.
All right, will do. I also just want to let folks know that we are recording this. So if you feel more comfortable having your camera off, that's totally fine. We should just be recording, Brian and the video. But if you feel more comfortable, please feel free to turn your own screen off. So I will screen share here.
Hey, Maker Fair. My name's Brian. I'm glad you could join us this afternoon. I'm going to show you just about everything that you need to know to get started 3D printing at the Collaboratory at Hillsborough Public Library. We'll take a quick look at what a 3D printer is and how it works, and some important concepts to bear in mind when you're creating your own objects for printing. We'll also take a look at Tinkercad, which is a free web-based app that you can use to design and create your own 3D objects to print. And finally, we'll take a look at the Collaboratory printer. That's the Dremel Digilab 3D40. And I'll go over some very important steps that you will want to be familiar with when you're printing out your own objects at the Collaboratory. It's a little bit to pack into about 30 minutes, so let's get started. This afternoon, we will use Tinkercad to design and create our 3D object that will print at the library. Tinkercad is free and easy to use. It's pretty fun. I like it a lot. I hope that you guys will enjoy it too. So you will want to point your browser to www.tinkercad.com. It's cloud-based, it's online, it's free. They don't spam you with a lot of ads or tell you that you need a paid upgrade for everything. So I think it's nice. You will need to make an account if you've never used it before. They give you a lot of different options to sign in, including using a Google account or an Apple account. Here I'm logging in with my Google account and I'm logged in. Once you're signed in, there's a dashboard screen with a list of all the recent design projects you've been working on are displayed in the middle here. In the little boxes, it will show you picture previews of your designs. We will be starting from scratch though, so we'll scroll back up here to the top and click on that blue box that says create a new design. Every blank design begins with a blank work plane. That's the blue grid we see right here. As the name implies, the work plane is the working area where we will build our design. Tinkercad defaults to using metric units, but in this lower right-hand corner here, you have the option to switch over to imperial units, where it says Edit Grid. I'm going to keep it to millimeters, though. In the upper left-hand corner, you'll see this cube, this three-dimensional cube here that says top and front. And by clicking and dragging on that, you can move around the work plane. Clicking on the word top will show us a top view of the work plane. Clicking the word front will show you the front of the work plane. Bottom will show you the bottom, and so forth. If we click on the plus sign beneath the cube, that zooms us in, and the minus sign zooms us out. Over on the right-hand side of the screen are our basic shapes, the literal building blocks of our three-dimensional object. We've got boxes and spheres, pyramids, stars, domes, cylinders, many, many shapes can be used, combined, and manipulated to create a three-dimensional object. This afternoon, we will make a nameplate suitable for hanging on a bedroom door or an office door, or any kind of wall door situation you may have in mind. Get started building our nameplate by dragging a box into the work plane. You just click on it and drag it over to the work plane like so. It's on the work plane, we will be able to manipulate it and change the box shape into the base plate for our nameplate. There are a number of different ways to resize this box. One of the easiest ways is in this shape window. You'll see here towards the right-hand side of the screen. These slider tools that we can use to change the length, width, height, and so forth of the box, or we can go ahead and just type our measurement directly into the box. If you have the box selected, you can see the grips on the corner of the box, and you can click and drag those to adjust the size as well. Let's revert that box back to its original 20 by 20 by 20 shape. When you create a new document with Tinkercad, your document is given a random silly name, like here, Smashing Truck, and you can change the name by just clicking on it and giving it a more useful name, like nameplate. For our base plate, we are going to transform our box into something that is more rectangular. And we'll start by adjusting the width. We want to make it, let's make it about 150 millimeters wide by 80 millimeters long. And we're also going to want to decrease the thickness, the height of the box. I'm going to decrease it to about 10 millimeters here. See, we can raise it, make it tall, make it 10 millimeters. Perfect. I don't love the sharp corners here on our rectangle, so by using this radius control in the shape window, you'll see that by dragging the slider or changing the number, we can give our rectangle some really nice rounded edges here, like so. We're going to add an indentation in our base plate using this really awesome negative space tool. You notice above the red box in the shape window, there is a grayed out box, and next to that, the grayed out cylinder. And what that does is creates a negative space in your design. So actually give it the same dimensions as our base plate. We're going to give it a bevel. We're going to make it about 150 millimeters wide, 80 millimeters long. Of course, now you can see that our negative space is the same size as our base plate. So the two would essentially erase each other. So we want to make our negative space, our negative indent space, a little bit smaller than our base plate. I'm going to decrease the size by about 10 millimeters on the width and on the height, like so. That will leave a nice 10 millimeter frame around the edges. Now what I want to do is center this negative space in the middle of our base plate, like so. And then I'm going to group the two different objects together. And what happens is that when you group two objects together, they combine into one object. And as you can see here, I've grouped the two objects together and whoops, I seem to have made a picture frame instead of a base plate. So what happened here is that the negative space was actually going all the way through our base plate. Not a problem though, because what we can do is ungroup the two items. So we have our negative space box back. And I'm going to lift it up, say about 5 millimeters there. Whoops, accidentally lifted both items off of the work plane. Let's set them back down again. And now I'm going to make sure that only our negative space box is selected. And I'm going to raise that one up and make sure that our then I can go back and regroup the two items together like so. And you can see now we have a nice base plate with a 5 millimeter indentation. Looks pretty good. Pretty good. Don't panic if you're not following everything I'm doing. Um, I encourage you to check out the app for yourself, check out the website for yourself, and tinker with it. That is a great way to learn your way around it. What is our nameplate missing? Ah, a name. So we're going to put a name on the nameplate. There is that text object in the basic shapes window. You can click and drag that directly onto the work plane. And essentially that creates like a text box. And obviously we don't want to make a nameplate for somebody named Text. We want to change that name. But first, I'm going to just change the color of the text. It really has no effect on our actual print. It just helps me to differentiate all the different items. So to change the word text into somebody's name, you highlight the word text in the shape window and type in the name of somebody you want to make a plate for. I'm going to make a plate for Francis. Now with the text tool, Tinkercad gives us a few fonts to choose from. There's this multi-language font, a sans serif, a monospace font, and a serif font. I'm going to go with the serif font there. So I'm going to click and drag this name and kind of just visually try to place it towards the middle of our base plate. And we are going to use the Align tool to make sure that our name is in the center of our plate. To use the Align tool, you need two objects to align to each other. So first we're going to select both the base plate and the text, Francis, and we're going to go up here to our Align tool. The Align tool is in the toolbar above the work plane here. It is the two different size rectangles. The smaller one is shaded in, the larger one is not. When we click that, what happens is that you'll see these black circles around our object. When we hover over the top dot, it shows us a top alignment. The middle dot aligns the two objects at the middle, and the bottom dot on the y-axis aligns at the bottom. We want our name to be in the middle of our plate, so I'm going to click the middle dot to align at the middle. Okay, now that our two objects are aligned at the middle vertically, we want to align them horizontally as well. And we do that the same way. The dot on the left-hand side, left aligns the two objects. The dot on the right-hand side, right aligns the two objects. And the dot in the middle aligns them at the middle. We will click on that middle dot to have our name perfectly aligned in the middle of the base plate. All we have to do now is give our design an eyeball, make sure it looks good, and export it for printing. And exporting is super easy. We come over here to the right-hand side where it says export, and we click export. We want to export everything in the design, and we want to print it out as an STL file. Make sure that you are saving or exporting your file as an STL file for printing at the Hillsborough Public Library. So click STL, thinks for a moment, and it should download onto your computer. Let's make sure it is there, and it is. Now that we have our completed object saved as an STL file, we need to get it sliced up for printing. So if you're at the collaboratory, we are going to use PrintCloud, a print-based slicing software for our printer. That should be all ready to use once you're in the collaboratory. To upload it, just click that Upload New button, choose a file. Want to make sure that you are going to choose the right file, and then open that one up and save it. Our next step is to just check the layout by clicking that orange layout button. We're going to check the layout of our object. Just make sure that it's sitting on the build plate and not floating midair. We also click that center button to center it on the build plate. If it looks good, click that save button. And we're ready to slice our object. Now, slicing, what it does, it literally slices our object into many, 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 many different layers. And it also, as it slices our object into many, many, many different layers, it also provides our printer with kind of like a roadmap for how to build, how to move. Once your STL file has been sliced by the print cloud, you'll notice a new file has been generated, one with the suffix G3DREM. That is a file that you want to send to the printer, and that is the one that will have a blue build button to the right of it. So if you click that build button, you'll get another dialog telling you to print or queue. You can click print and you're ready to go. Probably around the year 2008 when I first learned that there was such a thing as 3D printers and 3D printing technology. I immediately pictured the replicator from Star Trek: The Next Generation in my head. If you've never watched Star Trek: The Next Generation, the replicator was a device about the size of a microwave that was able to manifest all kinds of three-dimensional objects out of thin air. It was able to make food, it could make drinks, it could make musical instruments, it could make furniture. It was like magic. All somebody had to do was ask, and the replicator made the rest. It was very cool. We're still a couple of years away from that level of 3D printing technology, but the 3D printers that do exist today are pretty amazing devices. And while these machines may not be able to create objects based on simple spoken commands like tea, Earl Grey, hot, the 3D printers and computer-aided design software that we have at our disposal make it easier than ever to translate an idea in your head into an object that you can hold in your hand. Most 3D printers you'll see around today use plastic thread as the material that is used to create an object. This plastic thread is called filament. The kind of plastic used by all the 3D printers at the Hillsborough Public Library Collaboratory and most 3D printers that you'll find in somebody's house. Um, it uses a plastic that's known as PLA, and that stands for polylactic acid. PLA, you should know, is safe, biodegradable plastic, and it is made out of cornstarch. Um, PLA is the only kind of plastic that can be used in printers at the collaboratory. So bear that in mind. So we have this plastic filament, and that filament is in a spool, and a motor feeds the plastic filament into the print head, which is kind of like the star of the 3D printing show. The print head is also known as an extruder. So what happens is that a motor feeds the plastic filament into the extruder, and a heating element inside that print head melts the plastic and then pushes out of a tiny nozzle at the bottom of the extruder. It pushes out that liquid onto the building surface. As soon as that plastic, really as soon as it comes out of that nozzle, it cools off and it hardens. And what the extruder does is, using motors, of course, it moves rapidly back and forth across the build plate, adding layer upon layer of plastic until the model has been completed. This is what is called an additive manufacturing process, because the printer creates the object from the bottom up through addition of successive layers of material until the object is completed. And we can compare this to, like, if we picture Michelangelo chiseling a sculpture out of marble, or an artist carving or whittling a figure out of a block of wood. Those are subtractive manufacturing processes because the object is created by removing or subtracting material from the surface. And in a nutshell, that is 3D printing. An additive manufacturing process is how 3D printing works. Now let's take a look at our Dremel 3D printer and what you need to know before you print a job at the collaboratory. Behold the mighty Dremel Digilab 3D printer, available at your friendly neighborhood Hillsborough Public Library Collaboratory, both Chute Park and Brookwood locations. Also, behold a box of important tools that should be located right next to the printer. Inside this box of tools, you'll find heavy gloves for when you're trying to remove a 3D print that is stuck to the plate. Also, snips for snipping filament. Snip, snip. Yeah. We also have in here some palette knives, perfect for getting the model off of the build plate. We'll talk more about that in a moment. You'll definitely want to be wearing some heavy gloves if you are using a palette knife and dealing with a stuck 3D print. Absolutely. I speak from experience. Let's take a quick look at the Dremel Digilab. We have here the front of the printer. There's a nice plastic door that should remain closed whenever it is printing. We also have a sunroof, a top door for easy access to the filament. This here is your print head. And if we pan over to the left, you'll see the filament, the spool of filament. And the spool of filament goes from here through this white tube, up, up, out, and into the print head. If we come around to the right-hand side, there's a power switch right there. Just gonna switch it on. Boop. And the printer should power on. You'll know that it's powered on because the touchscreen will come alive. The motors will burp and whir a little bit. Sometimes it takes a moment or two. So let's change the filament, yeah? What you want to do is tap this filament button right there. And it will give you instructions. It will tell you to cut the filament. Yeah, so let's snip the filament. You'll want to go over to your box of tools and grab that snip. Like so. And just get in there and here we go. Snip. Next, we're going to take the purple filament out of the printer and replace it with this white filament. Let me show you how to do that. To the left side of the printer where the filament lives, and you'll see this circle. This looks a little bit like a record, and you give it a little turn counterclockwise, like so. Pull it out, and gently remove the filament. There. Like so. Let's take our white filament and move over here a little. We are going to feed the filament into the white tube. So unroll a bit or unspool a bit the filament and feed it thusly. I think you got the idea. Zoom up, we can see that our filament has gone through this tube and popped out on the other side here. So we take the filament and we feed it through this black part at the top, right here, and set it down into this hole. So once the filament has been positioned into the hold, we want to come back down to our touchscreen and tap the next button, telling the printer that we're ready to begin feeding the filament into the print head. So you'll hear a motor whir inside the extruder, and you'll want to gently feed the filament down until you feel the extruder has taken hold of the filament and is pulling it and is drawing it down by itself. Meanwhile, our print head / extruder has heated up and is flushing out all the old filament and beginning to put out some of the new filament. Our extruder will go back to its start position, and once it stopped moving, it's safe to reach inside the printer and sweep out any excess filament that might have come out during the process. We'll want to put the door back on the filament holder. Just give it a turn clockwise, it'll click into place, and there you go. once the filament is in place and the plate is free of any filament debris, you can go back into the Dremel Print Cloud, the slicing software I showed you earlier, and send your job to print. Once the model is completed, it's time to take it off of the build plate. Thankfully, that is pretty easy to do because the build plate is removable. These silver clips on either side of the plate will swivel open, and you can lift the build plate up and out of the printer. Also, the build plate is flexible, and that makes removing the print from the plate a lot easier. If you do have a stubborn print that refuses to separate from the plate, use the palette knife and some heavy gloves to pry it off of the surface. Finally, scrape or brush off any leftover debris that remains on the plate, and then place the build plate back into the printer. Thanks to magnets, it ought to snap right back into place. Then we just close the silver tabs to secure the plate again, and the Dremel 3D printer is ready for the next person to use. And that, friends, is getting started with three-dimensional printing at the Hillsborough Public Library Collaboratories. Thanks a lot for viewing, and if you happen to be watching live at the Westside Maker Faire, stay tuned for a live Q&A session immediately following this program. Hi, everybody. Let's see. I guess if you want to, if you have any questions, and I'm sure there are probably one or two, go ahead and you can type them into the chat. Should we? Awesome. Thanks, Thank you. There is a resource list on BiblioCommons on our catalog, on our library catalog. Let me go ahead and just share that link with you really quickly. It has a lot of online resources and print resources that helped me a lot. And I think they're great resources for learning more about 3D printing. Okay, is there a handout? Actually, this link that I just put out has a list of resources. We don't have a handout just yet because at the time of actually making this video, we were prepared to reopen the collaboratory in September, in early September, and right now those plans are on hold. Once we do reopen, we will absolutely have kind of like a step-by-step handout guide for anyone using the printer. Yes, and you can also watch the recording by searching for 4th Annual Westside Maker Faire starting tomorrow. You can also, if you're interested, I think you can book a librarian, and Book a Librarian is a great service that HPL offers, and you can have a librarian talk to you about 3D printing one-on-one for about a half an hour. If it's a video call, we'll have a 3D printer handy, so it'll be like a personal tutorial.
Something I forgot to mention that is really important about 3D printing is that we are limited by space and time, size and time. So the printer really cannot print enormous objects. I think like a 6" by 6" is, I think, a 6" by 6" object, excuse me, would be, I think would be like a perfect size for printing. And that would take probably a couple hours depending on how detailed it is. And that's the other thing that I forgot to mention in this video, is that 3D printing takes a very long time to do. And the larger and more complex your object, the longer it takes to actually print. And because we are right now open, I think 8 hours a day, we're kind of limited as to like our prints, the amount of time we can spend printing a single object to, I think, about 6 hours. But we can actually go online. You can go online and submit your print to be printed. I'll go ahead and put that link into the chat. Whoops, the link didn't come out there. But you can send your file along with this request, and we'll print out your item for you. There we go. There we are. So if you want to give an object a try, we'd be happy to print it out for you.
Brian, do we want to go ahead and see if we can try doing that poll?
See, I'm sorry?
Oh, sorry. Do we want to see if we can try doing the poll?
Oh, yes. Okay, great. So I mentioned a poll. It's 2 questions. It's so helpful for us. And if you can respond to it, that would be great. So I've shared it out, and thank you all so much for attending today and supporting the collaboratory and the maker spirit. Gosh, it's such an amazing thing. I'm like, it's very cool.
And Brian, you also have 2 other questions in the chat that just came up.
Okay. Do we have, okay, Rachel asks, do you have a limitation per person? How many times or how many items? I don't know that we have a specific policy limiting the amount of prints a person can do, because, yeah. So no, we don't have a limit. I think one print a week is probably, I think that's probably where we're at. And the form that I posted a little bit earlier has a whole menu of print colors. And it's really neat because the print, when it's ready to pick up, is treated like a library hold. You'll get an email or a phone call when it's ready to pick up, and then you just walk over to the stacks with the holds, pick it up and go. Someone is wondering the cost of printing an item. So the cost to our library card holders is free. There is no charge for printing, which is pretty awesome. Let's see. We have a few minutes if there are more questions, and if not, I'd like to thank you all so much again.
If there are also no other questions, I just want to remind people we have a couple more events today. Let's see, there's a baking demo with Edgar. We'll be finishing up, but if you want to catch the end of that, you could. There's also Chinese calligraphy with Jojo will be at 3:30 p.m. So those are our other events. And thank you for coming to the Maker Faire. And there's one more question I see.
Oh. Can you use two different colors? That's a good question. Not at the same time, unfortunately. Our printer can only do one color at a time, but say you have a print that is two pieces. It's possible to do a print in one color and then a second print in a different color. I wish I had a good example of that, but I do not. I think that PLA can be sanded down and painted with an acrylic, I think. If you do figures or models or anything like that.
Well, I'm not seeing other questions currently. Oh, someone says, thank you for the presentation. They like seeing it from home. So thank you, Brian. That was just an amazing video. It's so fun for me to learn more about 3D printing too.
It's fun to share. Oh, I see. Francis, okay. So Francis, actually, here is another one. This is an identical print. I use the same file, just a different color of filament. But yeah, unless we printed out, unless we made a separate file and that just said Francis and printed that out separately, we wouldn't be able to print Francis in a different color, if that makes sense. You're welcome, Marcy. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for coming, everyone. And I hope you all have a great rest of your days. And thank you so much, Brian. That was very informative and awesome. And we hope to see you at other events and see everyone at Maker Faire hopefully next year as well. So with that, we're going to end our meeting. Goodbye.